Hello class, this is Professor Tweed and we're going to look at finishing up this exploded axon by making dotted lines to connect the various pieces together. And there's lots of different ways you can make dotted lines. A really good way, especially if you're going to compose this with a bunch of other images in say Illustrator or InDesign, is to do it in there where you can really get good vector work and have a lot of control over the elements. You could also do various things using the vector work in Photoshop, various tricks, but this is sort of a quick and easy one to do. It looks nice. You don't have a tremendous amount of control over it, but I think it's a sort of an interesting lesson to learn, which is to control the brushes. And we haven't gone over a lot of that in this class, but it is a good sort of advanced trick to know. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a new layer for my dashed lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to brushes. I'm going to set the size of the line to about 1. I just have this one. So I think 4 or 5 is going to work. I'm going to try 4. I think 5 might be better. And what you can do is, if you didn't know, if you come over to brushes over here, your brush presets, sorry, I actually want to be up to this one under brushes. There's actually, every brush you can really control a bunch of different things. And as you start to control the brushes over in here, you can do, great work. So I've done these things to sort of make gardens and things where you can have that sort of grass brush we looked at early in the semester sort of jump around, and you can add flowers. It sort of like randomizes flowers. I've done lots of things where you want to sort of paint and sort of make a randomize things of something, and it works pretty well. It's really just getting to know there's various settings over here, and there's a bunch of stuff you can do. But really what we're going to just look at is making a dotted line, which is pretty simple. You're going to want to just change a few settings. If your hardness isn't at 100, set it to 100%, which it probably is, because if you're using the main sort of circle one, which you should have in the last step, that's what you'll have. And the key here is to change the spacing. Right now, the spacing is set such that it forms a solid line. And you're not going to notice much of a change as I pull this up, because as long as it's at sort of less than 100, it's going to form a solid line. But as soon as I go above 100, you can start to see down in here that I'm getting little dots next to each other. And the further I pull this away, the further the gap between those dots become. And so I think in this case I want to have fairly equal, so around 180 in my case. Makes sense. You might play around with other things. And now when I use this paintbrush, I'll just do a test over here really quick. You can see it's forming a bunch of dotted lines really that easily. And I'm going to look at, like, the dotted lines I think look good. If you want it to be dashed, you could actually make your own brush type with sort of a linear piece of element, and then sort of if you space those out, you'd have a spaced dotted line. That could be fun too. You can really, again, make any sort of shape and size, but nonetheless we're going to go with this one. I'm going to just minimize that, and I'm going to start down my first floor, or actually my basement. I'm going to pick a primary corner. I'm going to do 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. This little bump out I'm not going to consider primary, so I'm going to start with that as my lower. I'm going to select there. I'm going to zoom up to the matching corner. Actually, this is, yeah, that's going to work. Does that align? Yeah, okay, good. Or it's close enough to aligning. Actually, I think this is bumped out a little bit between floors, but we don't see it all that much. I'm going to go back to my back corner and sort of do the same thing. I'm going to click there. I'm going to hold Shift and pull it up on that back corner just like that. And I'm going to come down to this back corner over here, click there, and hold Shift. Actually, I might even sort of have to align it visually through the second floor because I can't see that back corner, but that's okay. And I'm going to do this front corner here. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to hold Shift on this front corner, which is barely visible there, and come through there in this location. And then you can decide that you might want to cut some of these lines away from the building. So for example, the ones that are up front, you might see those streak through. Maybe you delete them, but certainly the ones in the back, particularly this one, is very distracting. So what I'm going to do is to simply delete that. I was going to go to my polygon lasso, and I'm going to zoom in on my first floor and my second floor and say wherever this is sort of crossing the front of my building, I'm just going to select it, hit delete, undo that selection set, so it looks like this line is crossing through the back of my building now, right? And so I'm going to do the same thing with this one on the second floor as well. Just going to select around that part of the line where it crosses the second floor, hit delete, and these two sit in the front, so I'm going to leave those lines there, and this one sort of sits off the side, so you can leave that line there. And now you can see this sort of as a stacked element moving up. And you, again, I would go ahead and label these with your text tool. I'm not going to do that, but you just click, you drag, you drop. That's That's easy enough. Anyone could handle that. So there you go. There's your exploded axon right from Photoshop, and good luck.